From the savannah to the Midland and the Atlantic, Ambazonia has risen to fall no more. Ambazonia rise.
Dear Ambazonians on the home front and diaspora.
Dear Ambazonia freedom fighters in the home front and in the diaspora.
The Ethics Commission of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is coming out to alert you that it is becoming more and more evident that the former British Southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonians, will soon emerge as the newest nation in the world.
We are calling on all of us to start preparing to receive Ambazonia as parents prepare to receive their firstborn child. Malcolm X said, tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. We are already very educated, talented, and very rich in natural resources. Do all this guarantee a safe and prosperous Ambazonia? The answer is an emphatic no. Theodore Roosevelt said, to educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace in society.
Ambazonians, it is time to start planning to restore our cultural and social values that characterize us as a people of good repute. Before our Republic to Cameroon invasion, we were respectful of each other, of the law, and of our culture. We earned our living through honest hard work, making clean money for ourselves.
Our values helped us to maximize the benefits of our natural resources as well as our human resources. Southern Cameroons were serene and clean, simply beautiful in spirit and in the physical. We all long for such a place to call home, and we can make it happen by God's grace.
Our local government areas and counties, are you preparing? Do you have an ethics commission in your local government areas, counties to serve as a moral compass for you? Do you have a copy of the Ambazonia Ethics Code and the Constitution?
All arms of government, do you have an ethics agency? Departments of DSS, HSS, Communications and IT, Education, DHACM, DFA and DEINR. Do you have ethics agency to serve as a moral compass for your departments?
Ambazonians, you need to know your rights by reading the Ethics Code and the Constitution.
Shame unethical behavior and reward good behavior in your communities. Hold leaders accountable. Be the watchdog of your communities and governments. See something, say something.
The church, you are the main research center of moral principles with the responsibility of moralizing the society. How effective are you outside the church building?
Maya Angelou said, when you know better, then you do better. Ambazonians, watch Ethics for an Emerging Ambazonia every Friday at 10 p.m. Amba time.
Exclusively on ABC Amba TV. Stay tuned.
From the savannah to the Midland and the Atlantic, Ambazonia has risen to fall no more. Ambazonia rise.
Dear Ambazonians on the home front and diaspora.
Dear Ambazonia freedom fighters in the home front and in the diaspora.
The Ethics Commission of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is coming out to alert you that it is becoming more and more evident that the former British Southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonians, will soon emerge as the newest nation in the world.
We are calling on all of us to start preparing to receive Ambazonia as parents prepare to receive their firstborn child. Malcolm X said, "Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." We are already very educated, talented, and very rich in natural resources. Do all this guarantee a safe and prosperous Ambazonia? The answer is an emphatic no. Theodore Roosevelt said, "To educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace in society."
Ambazonians, it is time to start planning to restore our cultural and social values that characterize us as a people of good repute. Before our Republic to Cameroon invasion, we were respectful of each other, of the law, and of our culture. We earned our living through honest hard work, making clean money for ourselves.
Our values helped us to maximize the benefits of our natural resources as well as our human resources. Southern Cameroons were serene and clean, simply beautiful in spirit and in the physical. We all long for such a place to call home, and we can make it happen by God's grace.
Our local government areas and counties, are you prepared? Do you have an ethics commission in your local government areas, counties to serve as a moral compass for you? Do you have a copy of the Ambazonia Ethics Code and the Constitution?
All arms of government, do you have an ethics agency? Departments of DSS, HSS, Communications and IT, Education, DHACM, DFA and DEINR. Do you have ethics agency to serve as a moral compass for your departments?
Ambazonians, you need to know your rights by reading the Ethics Code and the Constitution.
Shame unethical behavior and reward good behavior in your communities. Hold leaders accountable. Be the watchdog of your communities and governments. See something, say something.
The church, you are the main research center of moral principles with the responsibility of moralizing the society. How effective are you outside the church building?
Maya Angelou said, "When you know better, then you do better." Ambazonians, watch ethics for an emerging Ambazonia every Friday at 10 p.m. Amba time.
Exclusively on ABC Amba TV. Stay tuned.
From the savannah to the Midland and the Atlantic, Ambazonia has risen to fall no more. Ambazonia rise.
Dear Ambazonians on the home front and diaspora.
Dear Ambazonia freedom fighters in the home front and in the diaspora.
The Ethics Commission of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is coming out to alert you that it is becoming more and more evident that the former British Southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonians, will soon emerge as the newest nation in the world.
We are calling on all of us to start preparing to receive Ambazonia as parents prepare to receive their firstborn child. Malcolm X said, "Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." We are already very educated, talented, and very rich in natural resources. Do all this guarantee a safe and prosperous Ambazonia? The answer is an emphatic no. Theodore Roosevelt said, "To educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace in society."
Ambazonians, it is time to start planning to restore our cultural and social values that characterize us as a people of good repute. Before our Republic to Cameroon invasion, we were respectful of each other, of the law, and of our culture. We earned our living through honest hard work, making clean money for ourselves.
Our values helped us to maximize the benefits of our natural resources as well as our human resources. Southern Cameroons were serene and clean, simply beautiful in spirit and in the physical. We all long for such a place to call home, and we can make it happen by God's grace.
Our local government areas and counties, are you preparing? Do you have an ethics commission in your local government areas, counties to serve as a moral compass for you? Do you have a copy of the Ambazonia Ethics Code and the Constitution?
All arms of government, do you have an ethics agency? Departments of DSS, HSS, Communications and IT, Education, DHACM, DFA and DEINR. Do you have ethics agency to serve as a moral compass for your departments?
Ambazonians, you need to know your rights by reading the Ethics Code and the Constitution.
Shame unethical behavior and reward good behavior in your communities. Hold leaders accountable. Be the watchdog of your communities and governments. See something, say something.
The church, you are the main research center of moral principles with the responsibility of moralizing the society. How effective are you outside the church building?
Maya Angelou said, "When you know better, then you do better." Ambazonians, watch ethics for an emerging Ambazonia every Friday at 10 p.m. Amba time.
Exclusively on ABC Amba TV. Stay tuned.
From the savannah to the Midland and the Atlantic, Ambazonia has risen to fall no more. Ambazonia rise.
Dear Ambazonians on the home front and diaspora.
Dear Ambazonia freedom fighters in the home front and in the diaspora.
The Ethics Commission of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is coming out to alert you that it is becoming more and more evident that the former British Southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonians, will soon emerge as the newest nation in the world.
We are calling on all of us to start preparing to receive Ambazonia as parents prepare to receive their firstborn child. Malcolm X said, "Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." We are already very educated, talented, and very rich in natural resources. Do all this guarantee a safe and prosperous Ambazonia? The answer is an emphatic no. Theodore Roosevelt said, "To educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace in society."
Ambazonians, it is time to start planning to restore our cultural and social values that characterize us as a people of good repute. Before our Republic to Cameroon invasion, we were respectful of each other, of the law, and of our culture. We earned our living through honest hard work, making clean money for ourselves.
Our values helped us to maximize the benefits of our natural resources as well as our human resources. Southern Cameroons were serene and clean, simply beautiful in spirit and in the physical. We all long for such a place to call home, and we can make it happen by God's grace.
Our local government areas and counties, are you prepared? Do you have an ethics commission in your local government areas, counties to serve as a moral compass for you? Do you have a copy of the Ambazonia Ethics Code and the Constitution?
All arms of government, do you have an ethics agency? Departments of DSS, HSS, Communications and IT, Education, DHACM, DFA and DEINR. Do you have ethics agency to serve as a moral compass for your departments?
Ambazonians, you need to know your rights by reading the Ethics Code and the Constitution.
Shame unethical behavior and reward good behavior in your communities. Hold leaders accountable. Be the watchdog of your communities and governments. See something, say something.
The church, you are the main research center of moral principles with the responsibility of moralizing the society. How effective are you outside the church building?
Maya Angelou said, "When you know better, then you do better." Ambazonians, watch ethics for an emerging Ambazonia every Friday at 10 p.m. Amba time.
Exclusively on ABC Amba TV. Stay tuned.
From the savannah to the Midland and the Atlantic, Ambazonia has risen to fall no more. Ambazonia rise.
Dear Ambazonians on the home front and diaspora.
Dear Ambazonia freedom fighters in the home front and in the diaspora.
The Ethics Commission of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is coming out to alert you that it is becoming more and more evident that the former British Southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonians, will soon emerge as the newest nation in the world.
We are calling on all of us to start preparing to receive Ambazonia as parents prepare to receive their firstborn child. Malcolm X said, "Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." We are already very educated, talented, and very rich in natural resources. Do all this guarantee a safe and prosperous Ambazonia? The answer is an emphatic no. Theodore Roosevelt said, "To educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace in society."
Ambazonians, it is time to start planning to restore our cultural and social values that characterize us as a people of good repute. Before our Republican invasion, we were respectful of each other, of the law, and of our culture. We earned our living through honest hard work, making clean money for ourselves.
Our values helped us to maximize the benefits of our natural resources as well as our human resources. Southern Cameroons were serene and clean, simply beautiful in spirit and in the physical. We all long for such a place to call home, and we can make it happen by God's grace.
Our local government areas and counties, are you preparing? Do you have an ethics commission in your local government areas, counties to serve as a moral compass for you? Do you have a copy of the Ambazonia Ethics Code and the Constitution?
All arms of government, do you have an ethics agency? Departments of DSS, HSS, Communications and IT, Education, DHACM, DFA, and DEINR. Do you have ethics agency to serve as a moral compass for your departments?
Ambazonians, you need to know your rights by reading the Ethics Code and the Constitution. Work from dusk to dawn, but a woman's work is never done. Undoubtedly, moms deserve to be celebrated because they are always putting others ahead of themselves. Mother's Day is the perfect opportunity to stop and reflect on all of her hard work. Of course, Mother's Day isn't just a day for celebrating your own mother. It's a day for honoring all women in your life who support and nurture you, from your sister to your grandmother. It's also a chance to wish a happy Mother's Day to the mothers in Ambazonia who are bearing the brunt of the war. Sometimes, the best way to thank Mother Ambazonia is with a simple and heartfelt message. Not all of us can write like Shakespeare, and it can be difficult to put our feelings into words. That's why we're calling on all women, men, old, young to say Happy Mother's Day by getting a copy of the book Echoes of Women's Tears. Echoes of Women's Tears is one platform where the Ambazonian woman gets some closure from the pain of losing their own in the senseless war. Echoes of Women's Tears, a 21st century genocide in the former British Southern Cameroons. Get your copy today.
The Ambazonian mother, pains in thorns, cries out blood as she sees her own maimed and wasted. Her joy of childbirth turns out bloody. While we may not be able to feel the weight of the pain of what the Ambazonian mother is carrying all through, We do know that recognizing her this day would mean a lot of hope for her. Death leaves a heartache no one can heal, love leaves a memory no one can steal. For our love for you, Mama, we will beat Cameroon out of Ambazonia. We will win the war. Sooner than later your tears of agony will suddenly become tears of melody. Happy Mother's Day, Mother Ambazonia.
You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Undaunted ABC Amber News Conference Day 5. Today is a grand finale. Today we will pray as one. I am Onyi Opala. Let's begin. Welcome again to Undaunted ABC Amber News Conference Day 5. Of course, you know that for the news conference, we will usually start with Undaunted news briefings. Today we also have Dr. Frederick Lobati, and he'll be speaking on when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. We would also have Professor Bridget Table again today, and she'll be speaking on the Cameroons at war, history, naming patterns, and gender violence in Ambazonia. We'll also be having Barrister Valentine Garner, and he'll be speaking on the force of on resolutions and non-negotiable sovereignty of Ambazonia. We would also have Secretary Martin Mungwa, PhD, AFASCE. We'd have him today to give the closing remarks, and most importantly is Pastor Commando, who would come to give us the final prayers. Now, let's start with on Monday. Let's see what and who we had on Monday, the 16th. Let's get the introduction first. Star Smart recorded that for us.
Today is all about Ambazonia. It's been 50 years of a purported national day. Ambazonia deserves to know the truth behind this day and why the oppressor is desperately determined to have the two Cameroons participate in the celebrations of this lie. Yes, it is a lie. Another vital question that we seek to provide answers during this conference is why Cameroon must come to the negotiating table for a peaceful resolution of the ongoing war in Ambazonia. This news conference is scheduled to take place from today, Monday 16th into Friday 20th of May. Prior to this time, we have exhaustively discussed the historical timelines, setting the foundation for this conference and any related arguments. We have researchers, writers, legal minds, and historians that will be talking to you during this wonderful conference. Today, at the peak of all, Pa Augustine Ndangam opens the discussion with an expose he titles The Non-Decolonization of British Southern Cameroons and the Question of a National Day. Dr. Patience Abiedu, the Secretary of State for Women's Services of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, who will tell us why the women and Ambazonians must boycott the 20th May, respect the lockdown days starting from the 19th and 20th.
Before the lecture started on Monday, we ran a few stories. We gave you a story on Paul Biya and the National Day. We reminded you that it was no longer a secret that the Nomgi Paul Biya B. Vundo Batlomi, head of state, commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the #1 citizen of La Republique, the Cameroon is sick, very sick and truly sick. Perhaps no longer alive, while it could be possible that he is dead. Just some questions that I would like us to ask again. If all was well and if the genocidal leader and his blood-sucking regime were now holding some skeletons in the cupboard, how wise will it be for the chief celebrant of a day of conquest of Ambazonians travel 5 days to the D-Day, May 20th, today? But then, before that time, some unconfirmed sources had even declared that the octogenarian monarch died several times. I want you to remember when Biya was declared dead in 2004. Do you remember what happened then? La Republique and France are capable of keeping his dead body and to make an official statement only in 2024, especially now that Ferdinand Ngonga and all-powerful SG are the La Republique de Cameroon presidency, and of course, Chantal Biya, the First Lady, are dictating the pace and the day-to-day running of state affairs. We also talked about the Swiss negotiations. That's Matt has it for you.
Once again, welcome to the conference. We begin our discussion today with the Swiss negotiations. It may seem silent in the media what's happening, what's holding the process, and the critical question is why Cameroon must come to the negotiating table for a peaceful resolution of the ongoing war in Ambazonia. Now let's get to the talk. In June 2019, the government of Switzerland agreed to mediate talks between Cameroonian authorities and the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonian restoration movements in a bid to end the war of genocide that was launched by the Yaoundé regime on the peaceful people of Ambazonia. The ongoing war of national liberation has claimed the lives of thousands of innocent civilians, with tens of thousands of refugees forced into Nigeria and other countries, millions of internally displaced, thousands illegally abducted and imprisoned, and hundreds of Ambazonian villages burned down by the genocidal forces of Cameroon. This has led to calls from the international community, the United Nations, the European Union, the African Union, as well as countless non-governmental organizations like the International Crisis Group, the Norwegian Council, as well as major powers like the US, Russia, and China for unconditional peace talks to end the conflict. Being a peace-loving people, Southern Cameroonians and Ambazonians launched a non-violent strike actions by lawyers and teachers in late 2016. To press for the legitimate rights of our people, leading to a violent crackdown by the Yaoundé regime and provoking our proud people to pick up arms in self-defense. 6 years into the conflict, with tens of thousands killed on both sides and mostly Southern Cameroon's Ambazonian civilians, there's increased calls from the international community for renewed talks towards a peaceful resolution. The interim government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, led by His Excellency Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako, has long stated that the Ambazonian people under the umbrella of the Ambazonian Coalition Team Act endorses the Swiss process as a sign of good faith in a pan-African spirit towards a peaceful resolution of the ongoing war. It must be noted that it had long been the policy of Southern Cameroonians under the canopy of the Southern Cameroon's National Council, SCNC, to seek for a peaceful resolution to the long-running occupation and annexation of the Southern Cameroons by the neighboring Republic of French Cameroon. This was demonstrated by the long-standing motto of the SCNC, which articulated the force of argument and not the argument of force. It was in this spirit that in 2003, a coalition of Southern Cameroon's restoration movement sued the Republic of Cameroon at the African Court of Peoples and Human Rights, ACPHR, sitting in Banjul, Gambia, 266/03 Kelvin Ngwanz Gumey et al. Cameroon. At the root of this lawsuit were gross violations suffered by the people of Southern Cameroonians emanating from the UN plebiscite of 11 February 1961 that determined the political future of Southern Cameroon. Therefore, in Southern Cameroons, the ACHPR was right in finding that the people of Southern Cameroon qualify to be referred to as a people. In its 2009 ruling, the ACHPR affirmed Anglophone grievances against the Biya government and recognized Southern Cameroons as a distinct people and recommended comprehensive national dialogue involving the Yaoundé regime and the people of the Southern Cameroon. Since 2009, the Biya government's unwillingness to honor this ruling and to rather adopt violence and brutality in dealing with the legitimate demands of the Ambazonian people is what finally triggered the ongoing war. In this respect, and in spite of the government of Switzerland's offer in facilitating an inclusive negotiation process as taxed by a majority of the stakeholders, the Yaoundé regime has remained adamant and has rather intensified her war of occupation, annexation, and genocide against the people of the Southern Cameroons. In the meantime, the Ambazonian Restoration Forces, ARFs, under the command of His Excellency Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako, has continued their fierce resistance to the terrorist genocidal forces of Yaoundé, inflicting heavy losses on their occupying armies in the past years. Just in the month of May, more than 20 terrorist forces of French Cameroon have been neutralized in their attempts to invade, brutalize and kill innocent women, children and young men across the territory of Ambazonia. Our resistant forces will therefore continue to confront and to inflict heavy losses on the enemy forces until the government in Yaoundé realizes that they must concede to a peaceful negotiating process that will examine the root causes of the current war and seek lasting solutions that will guarantee the internationally recognized rights of the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia people to sovereign independence and statehood. It should be clear to the Yaoundé regime, now that they can't subdue and subjugate the people of Ambazonia through fraud and force as they have been doing in the past, the only viable solution for them now is to come to the negotiating table as demanded by the international community. Before we move on, I would like to announce that my co-host, Onyi Okpala, is back from her medical leave, sound and strong. Let me meet her so that we can expand on these briefings of today. Stay tuned.
Oh well, I came back stronger. Now that was day one, we moved to day two. We had brilliant lectures from our speakers, by the way. Now let's get the full report of how day two started. Still Smart had that introduction as well.
Today is all about Ambazonia. Like I mentioned yesterday, it's been 50 years of a purported national day. 50 long years of the slave masters making a mockery of their slaves. The 20th May celebrations is like telling a slave boy to dance and jubilate on the streets with a song and lyrics that says, "I am a slave boy, proudly slave, forever slave, oh slave." This is an insult. Insult of the first class. That's why we believe that Ambazonia deserves to know the truth behind this day and why the oppressor is desperately determined to have the two Cameroons participate in the celebrations of this lie. Oh yes, it is a lie. Yesterday, at the peak of the hour, Pa Augustine Ndangam opened the discussion with an expose he titled "The Non-Decolonization of British Southern Cameroons and the Question of a National Day." Ambazonians were excited by the revelations of the historical facts that Pa Augustine Ndangam presented. Dr. Winnie Lubati, House Speaker, Interim House of Representatives, she will be talking to us about the revolutionary council idea of illusion versus the interim government for the nation of Ambazonia. And also she will be talking about why Ambazonians must respect the lockdown ordered by the interim government. Next in line will be Professor Bridget A. Tebo. She is a brilliant, delightful person, a respected scholar, and is committed to the study of women and gender and the education of all students. Dr. Martin Mungwa captions his expose of today, "A Road to Somewhere, Our Common Cultural Heritage." Stay tuned.
Just in case you are joining us for the first time, well, we are already in our day 5 of our news conference and we are on the recap. Now, before we actually met our guest on day 2, we gave you a report on Colbert Gwen. Now, on the second day, we spoke about the illegal lockdown caused by Christopher Anu and the coup plotters who were largely ignored and boycotted by the people of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia after the weekend country Sunday. People went about their normal activities in business places, offices. There was just one exception, by the way. The people of Bali were kept under lock and key by the rogue Babila, who had threatened to shoot any civilian seen wandering that day. And we're asking on Tuesday, was the lockdown set to punish the people with the intention of turning them against the Ambazonian liberation fight? This is terrorism and must be denounced vehemently. In Kumbo, Bois, Tico, Victoria, Bamenda, Bafut, and many other places, it was business as usual, and people went out shopping in anticipation of the official lockdown, which was yesterday and today, the 20th of May 2022. But we already know that the people of Ambazonians are smart and know who to listen to. They know very well that the interim government led by Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako doesn't just call for lockdowns, but does so when it is absolutely necessary. We hope that this failed attempt to lock down Ambazonia by the Turkish coopers will be the last and will make them eat humble pie and have the decency to apologize to Ambazonians for attempting to lock them down. Our people have been through a lot, and this should not be happening to such oppressed people during these trying times of global price hikes due to the war in Ukraine. They deserve better. Lockdown was only yesterday, 19th, and today, 20th of May. Now we go into day 3. So Smart recorded that for us as well.
The Undaunted News Conference is a dedicated centralization on Ambazonia. In fact, it is all about Ambazonia. In a world where the importance of storytelling can never be overemphasized, where systems and institutions of nations of these macrocosms are enhanced with the dissemination of information, Ambazonia and Ambazonians have got to tell their own stories by themselves. Before I even make progress, I would like to seize this opportunity to thank ABC Amba TV management, club members and board members and all stakeholders for granting us this platform through their generous donations to organize this very special news conference. It is the first of its kind. We are in today the 3rd day of the Undaunted ABC Amba News Conference, and it is so amazing. Like we mentioned from day one, it's been 50 years of a purported national day. 50 long years of the slave masters making a mockery of their has reason to fall no more. What's the 20th of May for Ambazonia? The 20th of May celebrations to the people of Ambazonia is like telling a slave boy to dance and jubilate on the streets with a song and lyrics that says, "There's no better way to demean a people. There's no better way to insult them." For the past 2 days, we have heard from Ambazonian researchers, historians, and mentors telling in the most simplistic ways possible hard historical facts. The enlightenment, the refocus, the truth. Out of a dark history, Ambazonia is triumphing into a bright future. You can now understand why we believe that Ambazonia deserves to know the truth behind this day, and the time is now. Another underlying concern is the desperation and determination of the oppressor to have citizens of the two Cameroons participate in the celebrations of this lie. Oh yes, the entirety of the 20th May is a lie. From day one of this conference, Pa Augustine Ndangam opened the discussion with an expose he titled "The Non-Decolonization of British Southern Cameroons and the Question of a National Day." Yesterday, day 2, we had 3 amazing speakers. Dr. Winnie Lobati, House Speaker of the Interim House of Representatives, she talked to us about the Revolutionary Council idea or illusion, that is the interim government for the nation of Ambazonia. At the end, she gave to us sufficient reasons why Ambazonians must respect the lockdown ordered by the interim government. Next in line was Professor Bridget A. Tabo, who expanded on the historicity and legality of the Ambazonian quest for freedom. To crown it all up, the Secretary of State for Communications and IT, Martin Mungwa, PhD, FASCE, brought us through the light of his expose, A Road to Somewhere, Our Common Cultural Heritage. It was close to 4 hours of great excitement, and we look forward to another wonderful time during today's sessions. Just a reminder, this news conference was started on Monday, May 16th and on Friday, May 20th. Prior to this conference, we have exhaustively discussed the historical timelines during our various news bulletins, setting the foundation for this conference and any related arguments. As you can see, we have dedicated volunteers, researchers, writers, legal minds, and historians who are willingly bringing to our beck and call the facts of the matter. After this conference, we believe Ambazonians will not perish because they lack knowledge. You sure do not want to be the one lacking or missing on anything. Pa Augustine Ndangam talked on Ahijo's ambivalence on 20th May as Southern Cameroon's Day of National Captivity.
We eventually went into day 3 and it was awesome. Our lecture that day was extraordinary. We have the beautiful, amazing Dr. Winnie Lobati, House Speaker, Interim House of Representatives. We also have the intelligent Professor Bridget Tebo, and of course, the outstanding Dr. Martin Mungo, Secretary of State for Communications and IT. And I'm certain Ambazonians had an educating time. Now, before we continue, here is an announcement from the Ethics Commission to Ambazonians and ABC Amba TV televiewers. It is an announcement and it reads: this week's Ethics for an Emerging Nation live show has been moved from Friday, May 20th to Saturday, May 21st at 5 p.m. Amba time. The great county of Kupe Maninguba is inviting all their indigents, regardless of their political affiliations, and Ambazonians at large, to come hear them talk about their plans to lay a solid foundation for an emerging ethical Kupe Maninguba county. On Friday, May 20th at 10 p.m. Amba time, they said they will have a rerun one of the popular topics, which is templates for making an official complaint or an official appeal in the process of conflict resolutions. Now, we started yesterday, that is in day 3, by accepting that the Colonial Governor Okalia Bilai is mean. With the analysis of Nijo and Mr. Tapadi King, we also concluded that he doesn't have any form of respect for Ambazonians. We also gave you a story about La Republic Social Democratic Front SDF Chairman Ni John Frundi and Senator Mochigo Van Gazen and the host of others, how they gathered in the chairman's residence at Swar. In that gathering, from our report on day 3, Senator Van Gazen Mochigo exhorted his party's chair to write to the Bia Junta, asking them to arrest family members, especially their parents, leaders of the Ambazonian liberation movement, and throw them behind bars so that they can capitulate. Oh well, our analyst Niger and also Mr. Ta did justice to that story. We had something recorded for you, but we will play that subsequently, so ensure that you stand by so that you can be part of this great show. Do not miss that recorded version of Okalai Bilai. Now, we went into our conference and it was another recorded success. I'm talking about yesterday. But before we go into day 4, we must appreciate all our guests who has honored our invite to be available in this news conference. And we must say special thanks to Dr. Winnie Lubati, Dr. Patience Abiodun, Professor Bridget Table, Dr. Martins Munwer, of course, Nijo, Dr. Frederick Lubati, Pastor Commando, Barrister Valentine Garner, and most importantly, Pa Augustine and Dangam. But of course, you are televiewers always sitting, watching, commenting, sharing. We say thank you. Yesterday, sorry for that technical mix-up. Now, yesterday was day 4, and it was an amazing day. We had the President Samuel Ikomesako address the nation. The President was available for questions thereafter. The President is usually filled with so much vigor, greatness, promises, and strategies. He's spoken a lot, but most importantly is our focus, tenacity, huge sacrifices as a people, and how far and strong we have come over the years. I mean, it's 5 years, and it can only get better. The acts of betrayal should be ignored, and moving forward should be focused. These were the words of the President. Tapadi King and Lady Casey were available for the presidential analysis, and it was a fulfilling day for every one of us. I'm sure that you will agree with me. Now let's observe what has been happening at the home front today. The ghost towns where the capital city of Ambazonia, Boya, has completely rejected the fake 20th May celebrations after the Colonial Governor Okalia Bilai addressed our chief with so much arrogance. Operation Fire for Fire hit hard in Bui County. Major General Talk and Do and his ARF's Bui warriors said a good number of Colonial La Republic de Cameroon terrorist soldiers to the world beyond. Yesterday, the 19th of May 2022, the Bui warriors, under the command of Major General Talk and Do, who succeeded late Ethamisobu, rest in peace, engaged La Republic de Cameroon terrorists in an all-day battle. The terrorists had positioned themselves in and around Kumbo, hoping to celebrate the banned 20th May Day in the land of no return. The Bui warriors tactically maneuvered and encircled them, hitting them so hard at multiple fronts. Major General Talk and Do himself led the battalion that attacked La Republic du Cameroon terrorists from Rogasser, Ndaji, and Toy. Boer warriors, Colonel Kavi and Commander Snake led the battalion that went to Tobin and inflicted heavy casualties on the enemy. Boer warriors Captain Stallion led the battalion that attacked a brigade at Squares Combo, while backup teams from Commanders DJ, Bad Boy, and Commander Meter stationed at Mbiv and Rongweave, making sure the area was secured and supply lines available to those at the battlefront. 2 La Republic du Cameroon terrorists armored cars were destroyed along the Tobin Weave Road by a team of IED specialists. Results from the all-day battles are fresh blood all over the Tobin Municipal Stadium, Brigade Area Company, and the Teo Radio Forest, and at least 5 Colonial terrorist military were brought down at the Brigade Squares 1. Countless at the Tobin Municipal Stadium, as many were packed there preparing to march. In addition to those at the Meteor Radio Forest were many of the terrorists, and they met their doom. Their dead and wounded had to be carried away to PMI with the help of backup teams, and they came from SOP. Most of those terrorists deleted are part of the team's town for knowing, harassing, kidnapping, and extorting from our civilian population. As La Republic du Cameroon terrorist elements continue their years-long burning and extortion mission, the Boer warriors waited for the right time to respond. Today's actions is just the beginning of things to come. Those terrorists, still lucky to be alive, should heed to the call from the warriors to hand their weapons at the nearest Ambassadorial Restoration Forces ARF's camp for rehabilitation if they wish to stay alive. That was the feedback from the Boer security team anyways. And there was a joint body fierce fire for fire again this 20th May 2022 at Ngokentuja County, where the Jaguars, the Black Lions, and the Mountain Lions, FM Sago, neutralized the enemy La Republic du Cameroon terrorist soldiers. A novelty this time that the ARFs of Ngokentujas have renamed themselves the Sako Boys. We will bring you details of these stories by Monday. But then let's get into the lectures. But before we get into the lectures today, we should have Mr. Ta have his analysis and commentaries about this. Mr. Ta, are you there? Can you hear me? I need to hear you. I can't hear you, please. I need to
I was
confirm.
muted since I'm yes, I was muted since I'm also streaming what we're doing at the home front. I must say congratulations for what you're doing. I want to confirm that Nijo is there because this discussion I'll be with him very briefly.
Yes, he's here, but
Okay,
would have to give him a few seconds before we bring him on.
that's okay. Right after that, I think Lady Casey and myself will make a brief comment on what is happening. What happened yesterday with the president's address to the nation. Immediately after that, we'll just respect the program strict to send. So we have Dr. Frederick Lobati start the lectures. I know Ambazonians cannot wait to listen to him, to Professor Tebo, Bridget Tebo, and also to Barrister Ghana Valentine. That is of the discussion of today. I'm glad that every Amazonian is seated listening. This is exactly 8:30, 4 p.m. Amba time. It's a good time to listen to such inspiring lectures. Now, we've received images like you said. Monday, the newsroom will bring detailed analysis what is happening from. Generally, if I have to give a score for Ambazonians on the home front, I should give them, I don't know what Nijo's mark will be, at least 95%. People hugely boycotted the Colonial events. It was a shameful thing. We saw 3 corrupt individuals in Jakiri of Bui County. I'm sure they had arms on their head and forcing them to honor that day. We also said earlier on in the week, which I'm sure you had mentioned, we reported something that is so shameful. The colonial government had blocked the main street in Bamenda, that is the Commercial Avenue, so that they will impose the celebration. What am I getting in all of this imposition to celebrate? It's indicative of there's no honesty in the day. If the day is honest, a nation or a government will be proud enough to give to his people reasons why. But since it was a fraud, and we've had this all through which they were going to be putting the nails on the coffin of it in the lectures with the experts that are behind the stage waiting. Why force people to celebrate a day if it is actually a day that should be celebrated? We nobody explains it better than Star Smart. You know, you find people wanting to embarrass their slave by asking the slaves, go out and dance and tell the world you are a slave. That's the meaning of the 20th May. The 20th May is a day when Ambazonians were brought into slavery, and they want to continually dance a slave song. When you are singing all the songs on that day, you're saying that, okay, I'm a slave and I'm joyfully celebrating that slavery. It's quite unfortunate. If the technicians are listening to me, I would like you to, before you bring Nijo immediately to speak, I would just like the technicians to play the video of Okala Bilai again to refresh the minds of Ambazonians, the arrogance of the colonial administration in Ambazonia. Just play it as I stop. And right after that, you bring Nijo to make an appraisal of this day, please. Thank you.
The 20th May, this day, all the chiefs will march with a pancart indicating their village and their population follow behind. If that is not the case, it means those chiefs don't exist. And if you don't exist as a body, as a village, you should not be called village and counted among the village. I said it some 2 or 3 years ago. The chief refused to do it because they were still volunteers, chiefs. But today, you know that the voluntariat is finished. Tradition is there, but you are tied to the state with an obligation. And chief, you know now, I don't want to disclose it here, but we understand each other. If you will fail to do what I am instructing, you will see 30 days after the consequences of that disobedience. So, Lord Mayor, prepare a packet. Because they will say that they don't have money. Prepare it. You have how many villages? 100 of packets. Every chief will pass. Those who are in exile in Douala or Yaoundé, let them stay there. When you come back, they'll find somebody else.
Fellow Ambazonians, ladies and gentlemen, once again you are welcome to Day 3 of this epoch-thrilling news conference powered by Undaunted. I know some of you are already familiar with the video we just watched. This video is one of the demeaning behaviors of the oppressor and its subjects towards Ambazonian as a people. The gendarmes are acting exactly like forces of occupation. Administrators, from their attitudes, you could easily tell that they have the same inclination. But you know what? The interim government is winning very bigly. From our intelligence reports, Colonial Governor Okalia Belai once more threatens chiefs to march, else they will be dethroned. Like, seriously? It sounds like a dream, right? That's exactly what has been happening all across Ambazonia for over 60 years now. Aren't disrespect. The Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, hitherto most cherished traditional values, now thrown to the dogs. How unfortunate. In one of the colonial charades in Boya local government area yesterday, we are told the colonial agent Okalia Belai, speaking with airs and with no little decorum for our so-called traditional rulers, now better known as royal beggars, threatens them yet again. The Bulu in Ambazonia yesterday threatened Ambazonian traditional leaders that all of them must march on May 20th, the day the Southern Cameroonians were mortgaged to La République du Cameroon in France. The day Ambazonians now believe that their true identity was tainted. The colonial governor orders the mayor to prepare billboards per chief, per village, carrying messages to purport the colonizers' agenda. Can you imagine? Okalia says every chief shall carry his billboard and march with it, followed by his subjects, and that chiefs on exile in French Cameroon shall remain there and will come back only to discover that they have been replaced. This is an insult right there. As I bring this report to you, I am vexed. So vexed. Can you imagine? Colonial Governor Okalia Belai is very much noted for his ruthlessness and sarcastic mannerisms when addressing the annexed people of the Southern Cameroons. In one of such outings, he described Ambazonians as cats, rats, and dogs. All I can say right now, may God save Ambazonia as he saved his people Israel. Let's get into the next segment of today's conference, and Onyi Opala will be your proud anchor.
Oh yes, I'm here, your proud uncle. All right, so let's get into the commentary right about now. Mr. Ta and Nijo are ready to air their thoughts on this particular subject matter.
I think that Nijo should just speak really quickly so that we get a chance. I'll be watching him in his British accent. I just want to enjoy him speak, and then and then we move into the lecture section. Dr. Lobati is waiting to talk to us. Dr. Lobati has about 20 minutes. Right after that, Professor Bridget has about 45 minutes. Barrister Ghana has about an hour to speak. And then the Secretary of State for Communications and will crown up the day as we Lady Casey and I will, when Barrister Ghana is done, Lady Casey and I will come up to do an analysis of what the president said yesterday, and then we will introduce the Secretary of State for Communications and IT. That's just the reverse of the program. We'll introduce the Secretary of State for Communications and IT, and then we'll crown the day with Pastor Commando praying.
All right.
Thank Nijo, go ahead. You just watch that and what is happening on the ground. Just speak, please.
Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you again. Thank you for the opportunity. If you can hear me, just do a volume check first.
Yes, you can be heard loud and clear.
Beautiful. Thank you, Onye. Thank you, and your wonderful team. And Paddy, you're doing a marvelous job. And before I say anything, it will be an unpardonable mistake if we don't pay today. Normally, it's 21 gun salute to our ARF. I think today you would agree with me, we can double that number. And I think they deserve to triple it. And we will give them, for today, successes, a 63 gun salute. And on top of that,
Wonderful.
I'm going to dwarf my heart. And I mean dwarfing my heart.
I don't even have one. Perhaps
Yes, because this is unbelievable success. And I think Comrade Paddy touched on a word I'm going to cling on: honesty. And Onye, I will tell you and your team, if you have any chance, there is a word here called resign. I don't know if the French have a word like that, but it's the culture of the Anglo-Saxon world where we belong, where if you are an administrator and you sit down with your subjects and give them those instructions, and as Billy, whatever his name is, said 3 years ago, he had asked our funds to go out and march, and they refused because they were volunteers. He still had the guts to come back and say the same thing last time. And today, the cameras have told us, I don't think he was there himself. And what that implies is he should not be in that position this time tomorrow. That is my advice to him. If he thinks he deserves to be the governor of whatever region in the English-speaking Southern Cameroons and in control of our funds and the population, he is in the wrong place. He should resign. He should submit his resignation so that the La République government can send in another administrator to work with those funds. He has failed repeatedly, not once, repeatedly. And all of this on record in an administrative role. How ridiculous could that be? And Comrade Paddy said, honesty. Honesty? Really? Do we? This I will reflect to the Ambazonians who are in the diaspora. And let me leave them aside and pay special tribute to my former schoolmate, Wirba, who a few hours before today said the IG is a Facebook group. Please, if we can save the clips that we have from Homefront today and share with Wirba, let him use his assessment of what this IG has achieved from 2017 to date on one aspect, the celebration of 20th May. And if a Facebook group can be that effective, don't they deserve respect? I leave that with Wirba. And then I come back to the ABC crew. When you linked on to Comrade Paddy, he was multitasking. And when I listen to you guys and know the things you do in the background, I think the ARFs deserve all of this 63 gun salute. But I think you guys on the occasion of this news conference this week and for all the efforts you have put through the weeks. I think you deserve a 21-gun salute to yourself, you and your team. And we're going out to campaign that all of the crew of the ABC team deserve a 21-gun salute for the successes that your efforts, and this I say with all my heart, you guys are unbelievable. And we're so proud, so blessed to have you, and I cannot thank you enough. One of the things I can't stop celebrating is I had to come out today in these colors, which are my Ambazonian colors, and I'm going to address my next few seconds to those Ambazonians, the diaspora, who up to date are still undecided and still feel that they can stay with their arms folded and watch others try to liberate their homeland. If you can publicize all of this, all of the happenings, if you can put this all on a clip and make it available on the platforms so we can circulate this and send to our cultural groups and ask some of these Ambazonians, if this is 20th May that they used to celebrate 10, 15, 20 years, if they look at what happened today and still feel that with all honesty, and I'm going to borrow Comrade Paddy's word again, with all honesty in their hearts, they feel that this movement belongs to other people and not to them, and that they can still stay and wait and proudly say, oh, this is going to end up in Yaoundé. Again, they've got it wrong. And all I can say is the doors are open for every Ambazonian who is in the diaspora. Please contact your local government area. Make sure you enroll. And as our CIC said last night, let us draft this year more than we have drafted before. This is going to be the third time we're going to draft. And 3 has a special meaning. We've done it the first time, second time, third time has to be better. So the appeal to all Ambazonians is for every LGA, go out there, sell the message from the 20th May celebration of 2022 to all Ambazonians, to every person of your LGA. If you're a local government area leader, a county leader, take the images from ABC and sell them to your community. They need to come and join us. They need to come and join this movement. Let us liberate their homeland. There is no other way. There is no other success we can use as a marker, as a campaign, as a selling tool to Ambazonians than what has happened today. And I'm ever so proud. And I think the Ambazonians cannot thank the ABC team enough. And thank you, and thank you again. Ambazonia is free. Thank you, Comrade Paddy, and your team.
All right, thank you so much, Nijo. Thank you so much for all the accolades. We accept all the accolades and the gunshots as well. All right, at the same time, I think I should also take all this time to thank the President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia for the message he has sent. We have received it with all humility, and we say thank you. Thank you, sir. All right. Also, on behalf of Stir Smart and all the crew, we say thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sure he knows why we are thanking him. All right, Mr. Paddy, you would want to speak on this issue as well, or should we go straight right into the lecture?
No, I just want to thank the president. The president always knows how to appreciate talent, appreciate hard work, and he has sent a message to a very special message to the ABC Amba newsroom crew. We are so humbled with it. We thank you, Mr. President, and I'm glad that Onye, you brought it up as a surprise that I really appreciate. Right away, I think we should just move into Dr. Frederick Lobati. Let him start with his lecture for today.
Okay. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very loud and clear. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you very well. Thank you. I appreciate all what you guys are doing. I want to share with our Ambazonian brothers and sisters, we're all brothers and sisters of the same family, my thoughts of what the real root causes of all the problems we're experiencing are. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 29, verse 2, it says that when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. We see this happening not only between Amazonia and La République du Cameroon. It's this unrighteousness that has caused La République to treat us unjustly in all levels, as a one nation after another, plus individually what we have experienced when we go through governmental infrastructures, but also even among ourselves, Amazonians, we see that we have some individuals that are causing heartaches. It comes down to the righteous seed and the unrighteous. And what does righteousness mean? The Bible says that blessed are they which do hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. There's nobody who is perfect. But if you have in your heart a desire to do right and to be right, and you're hungry, a hungry person will look for food. Somebody who is thirsty will look for water to drink. So you will seek the righteousness from the one who is righteous, who is God Himself, Jesus Christ Himself. And as the word promises, He will fill you and grant you the ability to be as righteous as He is. And so Jesus said in John chapter 10, verse 10, He says that the thief, in this case talking about Lucifer himself, comes not but to steal, kill, and destroy. Mark those characteristics of the wicked, of the unrighteous. They come to steal, they kill, and they destroy. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. So Jesus Himself came that we may have life. And so those who are righteous and rule, they are helping people to have life just like Jesus did come, more abundantly. But the wicked, those who are serving Lucifer himself, they do the opposite. And that's why Jesus again said in John chapter 8, verse 44, He says, you are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer. See, they murder, they kill from the beginning, and abode not in the truth. They tell falsehood all the time, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So we realize the two camps: those who are of God, that are seeking to do the will of God, and that have sought the face of God to transform them and help them. The Bible says God writes the words in their hearts, and then they are enabled by the power of the Holy Spirit to do the things of God, to bear the fruit of righteousness. And then those people are led by the Spirit of God to do good. And the Bible says, out of their bellies will flow rivers of living water. Water gives life. These people who are righteous, they only do good. They don't go doing bad things. The other people, on the other hand, if you see the fruit that they bear, the very characteristics of Lucifer himself. And so those who live and tell a lie and insist on it, you know that those guys are led by the devil himself. And so when you look at the government of La République du Cameroon and what has happened, there is actually a book about Paul Biya written, which says Paul Biya's Power Lotion. I don't know whether anybody may have read that, but I read it a long time ago. You can Google it, Paul Biya's Power Lotion. You see it online. You can read it for free online. You don't necessarily have to buy it. And it tells you all the wicked activities that he's engaged in. He even went to the point where how he killed his first wife. You see, these people kill and destroy and steal, and he is the father of all his so-called ministers that emulate him and follow him. They do the deeds of the devil. That's why it's not surprising to see the kinds of things that they do. They don't have any remorse. Somebody that he made a certain speech on this so-called, and he never said anything about the conflict in Southern Cameroon. Even though he claims that we are part of it, he rather talked about COVID-19, and that was all about it. Suffering. Even the people in the were demonstrating today, which is the National Day, complaining that their land and their houses destroyed. No mention about that. Not to mention the war, as the international community has recognized, in the southern Cameroons now for over 5 years. He said nothing. All he said was just about COVID, which really has no relevance because La Republique doesn't do any serious thing about COVID. They just go around putting some mask on their faces. But again, that is the work of the wicked, those who don't truly know God. So it tells you that those who truly seek the face of God, and they seek and strive to do the will of God, are the righteous. They are not perfect, but they strive as much as possible to do that which is right. And so when you do that and you seek the face of God, He will fill you, He will help you, He will enable you by transforming your heart, our thoughts, our imaginations to be according to His purpose. And then we can now be righteous rulers among people. We will do righteous governance. Now, I'll read a portion of scripture here in the book of Isaiah, chapter 32, verse 17 to 18, which says, 32, 17 to 18 says that, and the work of righteousness shall be peace. So when the children of God rule, there is peace. But when the children of unrighteousness do the biddings of Lucifer himself, then there is war. You see it all around the world, but I'm focusing on our case between Ambazonia and La République du Cameroun. And the effect of righteousness is quietness. See how people are restless, running all over, people abandoning their homes. Their homes have been destroyed. Some have been killed. People have been crying because the unrighteous have been causing all these problems. Assurance forever. People do not have any assurance. They don't know what the future holds and what will happen to them. It just came out today that La Republique has decided that those who go to ENS and those educational professional institutions will no longer have direct employment by the government, but after they have finished all of that training, they will have to go through concours again to see those who were employed, and they are complaining. I don't personally have a problem with that. It does not mean that when you go through a school, you must immediately be employed by the government, but it's another means for that unrighteous government to take more bribes from the people. So you can finish high school, go through their professional school after selling family property and buying the ability to get in there. And after you graduate, you're not guaranteed any job. And then they want you again to bribe them one more time to decide if they want to register you as one of the government employees to get some level of income, which is very low. On the other hand, the military that is used to kill people, they are immediately registered and start getting payment of their salaries before they even start working. Just as the so-called administrators, like the Okala Bilai they were talking about, they start getting paid before they go to the field. And those are the people that do a lot of unrighteous things, like we have exemplified with what Okala Bilai was doing. So, but the children of God, when they are in authority, they cause people to have peace in their hearts. And when they eat, or when they sit down to eat, they do so to strengthen themselves. They don't do so to to take a bribe or to extort money from people. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 17, chapter 10 verse 17, it says, "Blessed art thou, O land, when your king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season for strength and not for drunkenness." So when they eat to get energy to do more good, they don't extort from people, pile up material things that they will never use all throughout their life in places, and this gets squandered while the people are suffering. But they eat just sufficient enough to be healthy. You see, I'm a physician, and we know that if you overeat, you get sick. You just need enough food to sustain your body for as long as God wants you to live. We all have just about 70 or 80 years. Sometimes it may stretch to 90. The oldest people live to about 116, 117. Sometimes you hear this in the news, like in California or Japan or sometimes in France. But there's no human being who lives to be even 120. They die. So, and even in that extreme advanced age, you no longer enjoy life. You see how they're limping. All the aged leaders of La Republique, you see them limping and struggling to walk even refusing to hold, walking canes to support themselves, and they're limping. People are watching closely to support them so they do not fall. You don't need that. So our life is limited, and we do not need to accumulate a lot of things that we will never enjoy. So as children of God, the righteous only take just what is sufficient to sustain them for as long as they are alive, to rule, so that there will be peace in the land. And in Psalm, when the righteous rule, according to Psalms 82, it says here, let me read that here. Psalms 82, verse 1 to 8. It says that God standeth in the congregation of the mighty and judges among the gods. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? He says, defend the poor and the fatherless. These guys don't even defend the poor and the fatherless. They instead will extort from widows. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. These are the kinds of things that the righteous will do. They will defend the poor, the fatherless. They will do justice to the afflicted and the needy. Deliver the poor and the needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods. You are like God. And all of you are children of the Most High. But ye want to die like human beings, fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, and judge the earth. God wants us to rule righteously so that there will be peace on earth and among all the human beings. We'll defend the cause of the weak, like widows and orphans, and that brings life. That is what happens when the righteous rule. On the other hand, if you read in Psalm 39, I'll be closing with this. I hope I've not taken more time than I needed. Psalm 39, verse 5. It says that, let me open the quick, please. It shows the futility of the human life. He says, behold, thou hast made my days as an handbreadth, just a short time, and mine age is as nothing before you. Very, verily, every man, all human beings, including Bia or whoever, at his best state is altogether vanity. You can accumulate all the wealth on earth. The Bible says that what will it profit a man if you gain the whole earth and you lose your soul? If you can imagine all the money that has been embezzled by Bia and his ministers, some have even embezzled as much as 3,000 billion francs CFA, which if you convert into US dollars, you divide that by almost let's say $600, it's about 590 something. But basically, if you divide 3,000 by say 6,000, that is almost 5 billion. They have embezzled that amount of money, and yet they will never be able to eat up all of that. And all of that is just but vanity. And even if you died and they put you in a coffin of gold, you still rot in there. Many of the pharaohs who died and their bodies were embalmed for eternity, they have been dug back out of where they were put in those pyramids and displayed. If you go to London, you will see their bodies displayed in some museums. And we have been able to study their stomachs to see what they were eating, taking x-rays to see what they died of. So they cannot come back to life and be the pharaohs they thought they were. We cannot pretend to be who we are not. Human life is but vanity and only has value in Jesus Christ. So what I'm trying to say is that when the righteous rule, there is peace in the land, and the righteous only take what is sufficient for them to do even better when they work among human beings. And so I want to encourage Ambazonians that as we actualize our independence, and this is going to happen, just as you have the sun shining at noonday like now where I'm speaking from, and just like you have darkness at midnight. That is the difference between La République and what they stand for and Ambazonia. And wherever there is sunlight, when sunlight comes in, darkness disappears. And so the cause of Ambazonia is right and is going to win at the end. And what I'm advocating is that we are graced or had the opportunity of some responsibility. Let's do so righteously in all humility, seeking the face of God to guide us so that our people will rejoice. That is what I wanted to share. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Frederick Lobati. Thank you so much for speaking on that subject. But please, I want to plead that you hold on. Remember, one of our major targets today is to pray as one. So please still stand by till we get to the point where we all have to get together and pray, because the lectures has to continue right about now.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor, for
All
that
right,
insight.
moving on with the
Letting
lectures for today, we have Professor Bridget Tebo. Now, she will be speaking to us with the topic, The Cameroons at War, History, Naming Patterns, and Gender Violence in Ambazonia. Of course, you would want to sit back, get your paper, get your pen, or your jotting pad, and then get ready for this lecture. Let's have her right now. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Very loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Right. Good evening, fellow Ambazonians. Greetings to the home front and all the diasporans. It's always a pleasure to come on ABC TV and share the little knowledge that we have with you. Today, my topic is coined from a couple of things that I want to focus on. We have the Cameroons at war, history, naming patterns, and gender violence in Ambazonia. Of course, if you look at what is happening, the Cameroons, because we talk of the Cameroons as, two Cameroons, that is why I came up with that part of my topic. Of course, it is a country at war with its purported region now known as Ambazonia or Southern Cameroons. Now, before I get into the need to be talking about, I look at the topic as something that can straddle not only the history of the problems that are ongoing in the Cameroons, especially in southern Cameroons, or what has been known as the Anglophone part of Cameroon. And that takes us to that naming pattern that I'm talking about. We also have the geopolitical and the historical context of southern Cameroons as a former British southern Cameroons, which inherited the colonial of British educational system, British culture, British language, and that separate from East Cameroon, which is former French. And the other day I talked about how those two states of equal status came together to form a federal republic of Cameroon. And so with that federation, there was an understanding, even though itself has been called into because of the legal ramifications or the unclear way that things were done. But suffice it to say that it did occur. The two states, Southern Cameroons had its independence a year after French got its independence. And so French had its independence in 1960, January 1st, 1960. Southern Cameroons got its independence October 1st, 1961. Right there, we already see some of the root problems that we're facing. which date is going to be celebrated as the Independence Day of the so-called La République du Cameroun? Is it October 1st or is it January 1st? And so you see that there were two states of equal status with two independent dates, two legal systems separate. And so to quickly summarize what I said last time so that I can move on to this other more interesting topic, we have Southern Cameroons that today is in turmoil because of a reckless war that was declared by an absentee president, is a nation of 1 million people located between Nigeria and the Republic of Cameroon. Now, the region was a League of Nations mandated territory from 1919 to 1948 and a UN trust territory placed under British administration from 1948 to 1961. Article 1514, we cannot say this enough, and I'm sure my next colleague and speaker, Barrister Ghana, will be talking about this very shortly. 1514 of the UN Trusteeship Agreement provided that Britain should administer and prepare that territory for independence and self-rule. From 1954, therefore, to 1961, Southern Cameroons was allowed to exercise self-rule, having walked of the Eastern House of Enugu in Nigeria, where they saw that they were marginalized or maltreated because they were governed as part of Eastern Nigeria because the British were cheap. They did not want to place another governor in Cameroons when there was one close by, rule both territories on the cheap. That is what happened, and that is how they got shortchanged, because all the development that was taking place in Nigeria. I saw schools and universities that were opened at the same time that Cameroon administered as part of Nigeria, and there was none whatsoever in Southern Cameroons. And so our leaders at that time had a reason to walk out of the Eastern because they were not happy. They walked out, no war, no killings, nothing. They walked out. And that was the end of it. So from 1954 to 1961, Southern Cameroons exercised self-rule. During this period, they had a democratically elected government with a built-in system of checks and balances that included an executive branch headed by a prime minister, a parliament, a house of chiefs, and an independent judiciary. It also had the experience multi-party elections that were fair and free of violence. That is something that neighboring La République du Cameroun don't know about. And so when we look at this historical context and start conceptualizing what I call anatomy of a conflict, this conflict that is going on now, we say that the root causes stem from this February 11th, 1961, the United Nations organized a plebiscite, giving the self-governing peoples of Southern Cameroons the option to achieve independence by joining Nigeria or joining the French-speaking Republic of Cameroon. The third option that everyone has been talking about was ignored and rejected. That option of independence by joining was a gross violation of Article 1514 of the UN Trusteeship Agreement, which placed Southern Cameroons under British administration with the trusted stipulation that it administer and prepare that territory for independence. Demands for the third option for that plebiscite, that is the option of outright independence, was rejected or turned down. And by turning it down, that also opened the space, because immediately following that plebiscite on April 21, 1961, the United Nations General Assembly adopted Resolution 1608, authorizing independence for Southern Cameroons. UN archivals reveal that 64 nations, 64 nations, overwhelmingly voted to authorize the independence of Southern Cameroons. 24 nations voted against, and 10 were abstentions. And so amongst the countries that voted against Southern Cameroons was, of course, our neighbor to the east, French-speaking Republic du Cameroon, because they already had their independence in 1960. So again, I keep going back to the fact that we are two entities, two states of equal status, different legal systems, different educational systems, different everything. And so that anatomy of a growing conflict, therefore, takes us to September 30th, 1961, the eve of the independence of Southern Cameroons. And what happened then? We see neighboring French-speaking Cameroon deploying troops, its troops, on the territory of Southern Cameroons and militarily occupying that country, even before that independence was announced. This was happening because while Ahijo, the French-speaking Cameroon counterpart of our John Go Foncha, was coached and guided by France, our leaders with Foncha were taken by surprise. The British had hurriedly left, abandoning them to their onslaughts, giving that territory as a small gift of the Queen to France without even blinking. And so they got there, they realized that they had documents to sign regarding that federation without giving them time to consult amongst themselves, to talk to their people, or to even read the fine print of what was in that document. A conference organized in a town, Fumban, in the French-speaking Cameroon, to establish the terms of the federation of the two states, failed to produce a conclusive agreement or union treaty. And there's no way in Southern Cameroon's or La Republique archives is a signed or ratified treaty giving legitimacy to that federation. So from the get-go, that federation was illegal. Illegal. As if that were not enough, the illegal sham that was the federation only exacerbated the problems that already started surfacing. No document exists legitimizing that federation. We have that already as part of the growing problems. Remember, I mentioned anatomy of a growing conflict. To our knowledge, there is no document in the UN archives validating the union between Southern Cameroons and La République du Cameroun, or registering the federation as a new de jure member state of the United Nations as of October 1st. As a de facto federation, the English-speaking Southern Cameroons and the French-speaking Cameroon had separate governing institutions, separate parliaments, executive branches, judiciaries between 1961 and 1972. But the angst that came with that federation were already manifesting itself, and our leaders saw that the federation was fake. The unification of West Cameroon and East Cameroon was fake. The name change from West Cameroon or Southern Cameroons to the Federation was fake because it wasn't upheld. And as if that was not enough, 1972, that federation suddenly ended. And so the federation ended because Ahidjo plotted and conspired, as usual, with France that has been coaching and guiding all the policies and all the evil things that have been done, to end that federation and pretend to have a unitary state because, they were brothers and sisters. So to change the name from Federal Republic of Cameroon to United Republic of Cameroon. And I remember asking this question the other day. If then was going to change, wasn't it the place of the English-speaking parliamentarians to also consult their own people, to have them decide whether or not to change the name from the federation by ending that federation with specific clauses that the form and nature of this is not going to be changed? Wasn't it their place to be allowed to do so? And was it also not wrong to involve La République du Cameroun and their own citizens in this decision-making process? And I cited Brexit. When the British were exiting from the European Union, they did not call France or Germany or Holland or all those other members of the European Union to come, and the British decided amongst themselves whether or not they want to continue the Union, being part of the European Union, or they wanted to exit. And they overwhelmingly decided to exit the European Union because they perceived that it wasn't helping them in any way. They exited. So if Brexit can exit without problems, why is the case of Southern Cameroons so difficult, especially given that the British are to blame? The British and the French and the United Nations are to blame for what is going on in Southern Cameroons today. However, that referendum was in essence a glaring violation of Article 47 of the Federal Constitution, which was ratified by French Cameroon and not ratified by Southern Cameroons, which provided in 1961 that the form of the state shall never be changed. The form of the federal state shall never be changed because these are two states. Two states. So you cannot change that form and suddenly want to have a United Republic of Cameroon without consulting people. That 1972 was the beginning of the forcible change that transformed Cameroon from a federation of two sovereign states of equal status. That is what we want to remember, because there's so many people in Cameroon who don't know their history. They don't know what is going on. They're listening to those non-entities coming out of La République du Cameroun and telling them all kinds of things. Listen. 1972 was the beginning of the full political change that transformed Cameroon from a federation of two sovereign states with equal status, two sovereign states with equal status, to an ultra-centralized, hyper-autocratic state that was bent on not only assimilating Southern Cameroons that were perceived as the minority, because it's only 20% of the population, but also marginalizing them. And so things could have turned out differently if, and only if, we had good governance. While was coached and guided by France to do everything to get to the resources of southern Cameroons by disguising the need for our resources into unity and fraternity and brotherliness. Would have worked if and only if what makes a good, strong nation were followed and implemented. If equal development was performed in all regions of the so-called République du Cameroon, there wouldn't have been that problem. If segregation was not so blatant, obvious that you could see, if all the name callings that were ascribed to Anglophones or the English-speaking population simply because they speak English, if only the so-called bilingualism programs was really, in essence, bilingualism for the nation made up of two entities, one part speaking English, the other part speaking French. If only they could use that as an asset, because I don't see many countries in Africa, in fact, I don't think there's any in Africa that can boast of having two international languages that can help access international and global markets and businesses. Cameroon had that. And of course, they had to squander it like everything else. No sense of integrity. No sense of the so-called unity that they claim to preach. Because if they did, if they understood what it meant, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be talking about an Ambazonian crisis or a Southern Cameroon's crisis or a country at war, like my title says. But here we are, 5 years after, the war is raging. The war is raging because government of Cameroon failed woefully to carry out the quote-unquote unity project. The government and government agents and ministers failed to implement policies that could unify and integrate everybody into the development process. They failed because what they were thinking of was how to get their hands on the resources that Southern Cameroons can provide, what they can do to silence Southern Cameroons or Southern Cameroonians, the former British Southern Cameroons, silence them, render them voiceless. And that is one of the things that some of us cannot take. You don't silence the people who are demanding basic, simple rights. Basic rights, the rights to education, the rights to free speech, the rights to development and good roads and social projects, the right to live peacefully in their own home. Those are not impossible things to ask of a government. But if the government is an absentee government, corrupt, reckless government, then it becomes a challenge to ask those things, because that's exactly what happened. And that is what happened when the teachers and lawyers took to the streets to protest after years of writing petitions, because they are the one how to write petitions and complain and table motions or grievances to the hierarchy in the country. After years of doing that, they decided to go out on the streets peacefully to demonstrate and ask for what is rightfully theirs. Please keep your Francophone or French-speaking teachers to the French-speaking part of the country unless they are coming to teach French. If they're coming to teach history or chemistry or math, it should be an English-speaking teacher who understands the language. Same thing, if you're sending the teachers to the French-speaking part of the country, send the English-speaking teachers who can speak English to teach English. And unless you are bilingual, and there was indeed a bilingual project to train civil servants to serve the nation, a project that could have been an excellent project because it would have empowered those civil servants to speak both English and French. That way they could be sent to any part of that country. But no, as part of the ongoing problems and segregations and marginalization, every recruitment had to be a French-speaking person in all the high-ranking places, as if the English-speaking parts of the country cannot produce intellectuals and lawyers and scholars, and judges to serve in their courts. And so what happened when these people took to the streets? I call that a turning point. The turning point when the lawyers and teachers were abused and arrested. November 2016, in a peaceful protest to decry the imposition of the French droit civil in the courts, in Anglophone schools, and in the courts, and also in Anglophone schools. After writing those numerous letters repeatedly to get government to make reforms, 2016, people and lawyers and teachers who were part of the consortium were still thinking of a return to the 1961 federation, because at least federation will give a semblance of autonomy. You can govern yourself, you can do a couple of things, and you meet at the federal level. A return of the 1961 federation to solve some of the problems of the highly centralized and corrupt regime. Because after Ahidjo left office and unfortunately died later, his protege, Paul Biya, took things to another height. The systemic destruction of all things Southern Cameroons, all the institutions, all the development corporations, everything destroyed. If they were not destroyed, they were moved to Yaoundé, which is in the French-speaking part of the country. And so when people decided, okay, it's time to redress this issue, instead of government lending a listening ear and trying to solve this problem peacefully, what did government do? Decided to send soldiers, because that's the only language that they understand. Send out the military through their governor and stooge, who, by the way, is not elected by the people. Governors to Southern Cameroons, Bamenda or Boya, are appointed by or the Yaoundé regime. What does that tell you? It tells you the governor doesn't have to serve the people. He's there to serve his president who appointed him. And so for that reason, he had the yam and he had the knife, because it didn't matter what he did. He's there to serve his master, the president of La République, and not the people. So when the governor saw these lawyers and teachers marching peacefully, instead of even coming out as a governor to say, okay, we will try to figure out what is happening. Oh no, he had to make a call to Yaoundé. That is how they are stooges. Make a call to Yaoundé. Oh, they're coming. What do I do? And the word was crush them. And so that is what they did. Brutalize these teachers and lawyers arrested them, threw them in jail. And so when it started with these lawyers, and the teachers had to join in, and the same thing happened. Because francophonization of schools was a no. You cannot send a teacher who doesn't understand the language to teach children. What generation of children are you going to be raising? And so they were all brutalized, thrown in jail. Now, when the population saw that their spokespersons, the people who can speak for them, teachers and lawyers, they joined the protest, birthing what has come to be known as the coffin revolution. And many young men and women were arrested, tortured, and thrown in jail. And so today we have a situation where after that happened, things only went downhill, because when they arrested and brutalized all these people, the assumption was that, the protest would end within weeks, at best, a couple of months. But it only empowered the youth, because it is their future that is at stake. It is their future that they're fighting, that we are all fighting for. And so instead of the head of state, who was away, was not even at home on his return, instead of saying, okay, I can't imagine that instead of trying to solve this problem, you arrested, or you do this, you did that, let's try and figure out what to do and release all these people, let them go home, they've done nothing. We will resolve this matter with immediate effect. No, what did he do? November 30th, 2017, he decides to declare a war of Southern Cameroons at the airport following a visit to Abidjan. Declares a war. Result, that war, therefore, is taken to people's homes, to the homes of Southern Cameroonians, because, the president has given the order, because he declared the war. And for the dull military who cannot even think for themselves, they went on a rampage. Homes broken into, every living thing killed, including bedridden grandmothers, handicapped persons, burning of more than 500 villages in a scorched earth practice. Scorched earth is a blueprint from the colonial French. As a result, therefore, we Southern Cameroonians who have fled into neighboring nations, neighboring Nigeria, and all the other countries around. And it is actually quite devastating that it is devastating. I don't know whether I'm having internet problems. It is devastating that you have so many people on the run, so many refugees now, so many IDPs, and the evidence of blatant chemical use by La République soldiers on civilians. Currently, it is a genocidal crisis that calls for immediate UN attention. You have, as I mentioned the other day, more than 30,000 people have already died, or 500 villages completely razed, over 1 million school-aged kids deprived of education, over 500,000 refugees, and thousands more maimed, raped, imprisoned, over 10,000 widows, and over 15,000 orphans. Now, this brings me to the particular plight of women, children, and violence in Ambazonia. because what is going on is totally unacceptable. Unacceptable because the world sits back and watches. And if we look throughout Africa's historical and contemporary experience, women have wielded influence and power. We have the Aminas of Nigeria, we have the Ya Asanta of Ghana, we have all these women, Hatshepsut of ancient Egypt, women who were strong, powerful women. And today women are reduced to victims because of wars, because of illegal regimes harassing people. The violence against women stems from endemic corruption and warfare in Africa and is not the exception. Today, Cameroon has joined the bandwagon of countries that are imploding because of bad governance, because of soldiers running amok with permit from the regime. And so violence against women and girls is acknowledged globally as a ubiquitous and atrocious flouting of human rights, a phenomenon that remains incontrovertible in post-colonial African authoritarian democracies, just like Cameroon. So what do we do in a situation like this? How do we resolve a situation like this? We see the issues of sovereignty, of citizenship, of placemaking, and we realize that the Ambazonian struggle or this conflict is an existential conflict. We look at the challenges to that new nation that is about to birth. We look at management of minorities and others by a rogue regime of La République du Cameroun that has pushed young women to the brink, pushing others to become fighters when they could be doing other things. We see the problems surrounding lack of infrastructure and the tensions of unemployment and issues of poverty that have led many to rise up and say never again. And so that is what we're looking at within this context. That is what trying to figure out what to do. And so if we look at the current situation, therefore, as a bigger picture of what shouldn't happen, then we say that the ongoing war and genocide in Cameroon needs to end right now. It needs to stop because the violence on women and children and everybody else is on call, and it is time for everybody to wake up and see that pampering and protecting rogue regimes, encouraging such brutality and high-level murder and maiming of young women and children, pushing them to stay in bushes is unacceptable. I don't know what to say in terms of the complicity of the international community, where on the one hand they've said, oh, democracy is good and we need to do X, Y, Z. But when it comes to Africa and when it comes to places like Cameroon and leaders like Paul, and not to see what is happening because they are all protecting their interests. They are protecting their other dealings that they're trying to do within the UN Security Council or within the UN General Assembly. And so it is not surprising you have in West Africa, West Central Africa actually, varied forms of violence men have endured from the hands of not only their husbands and brothers and fathers, but also family members and especially the normalization of violence by the state. So you look at the interlocking access of power, of class, of sex, which needs to be subverted as a whole rather than prioritizing one over the other. Because in the 1980s, you had the issue of violence against women that was widely considered a taboo. But today, by 1988, you're breaking a point of, the Tanzanian Media Women's Association in 1988 that had begun engaging the public through their magazine, Suti Suti, Women's Voice, on the numerous challenges that women faced, not only on social, reproductive, but also the economic front. And so we see that the war in Ambazonia only exacerbates these existing problems and issues and expanding the inequalities that women face in society. But today, women fighters, we have warriors, we have tools, we have hopefully leading women who can take the button and fight what is right. I think I want to end here, and I'm hoping that for the listened or for the international community that was listening, we have protests that have been done by diasporans. We have letters that have to all authorities that you can think of, from U.S. congresspersons to Secretary General to UNHCR, renowned press and journalists. It's not for lack of awareness. Like I said, it is time they opened up their eyes and do the right thing. And the right thing is to immediately call their friend, Paul Biya, to order, encourage a ceasefire, and stop sponsoring a rogue regime. The restoration of the Southern Cameroon statehood and independence, region that is capable of participating in a ranging global setting, is a must. The implications for human rights in Cameroon and Africa cannot be understated. Thank you so much. I end here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Bridget, for this wealth of knowledge that you have generously given to us today as a people. I want to say thank you. Thank you. Our generation is so blessed to have elder sisters and mothers like you who took out the pain, the courtesy to investigate, to study, and to get the facts. I want to proudly announce that Professor Bridget Table is lecturer. Dr. Martin Mungwa corrected me that she's not just a lecturer, she is a professor by not just by award but by merit in the university. And I would say that she is a history professor in the UMass University, I think one of the best universities in the United States of America, precisely in California. And she is an Ambazonian. That is amazing. It is too late. You want to add something? You want to say something, please?
No, I wanted to say that I'm a professor at the University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth right now.
Yeah.
But Massachusetts, yes. And then what SOS Mungwa was saying yesterday was that I was or I am an alumni of the University of California, Los Angeles. And so he said University of California, Berkeley, which is my sister campus to Los Angeles, my ex-University of California, Los Angeles. Both of them, UMass, Dartmouth, and UCLA, best schools in the US. Thank you.
So, at least I was correct, and I gave half truth to Ambazonians, and thank God you're on the platform to make this wonderful correction. So I was about saying that it is too late for the Republic of Cameroon to fool us. And like Star Smart said during the week, she said, Ambazonia will not perish anymore because of lack of knowledge. They will not wrap us into any war council, into any national dialogue. We will meet in Switzerland, eyeball to eyeball, as equal parties to negotiate our ways apart. Thank you very much. Onye, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Onye.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Thibault. Thank you so much for making yourself available today. You know, when you were making those references, you mentioned the fact that let me get that correctly, over 1 million children are denied education. You know, severally, our news bulletin has tried to find a way that can be corrected so that especially the children in Ambazonia would not lose out this period. They can still have the privilege of going to school even while the revolution and the war is going on. You know, we've tried to handle that, and now that you've highlighted that, I'm sure that it will be looked into critically. Thank you once again. And please just hold on. We might all need to come together for the prayers at the end of the conference, which is just a few minutes to go.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so coming up next is Barrister Valentine Ghana. All right, he is the one that will be coming up next. But before he comes on, we need to play you this editorial that was recorded by Star Smart. I'm sure that you would learn a thing or two from it. And as well, it can also form a foundation for Barrister Ghana's lecture this evening. Take a listen.
Monday, we had an awesome moment with Pa Augustine Ndangam, and we would like to say that his topic of discussion was quite fascinating. We, the Undaunted, have a perspective we would like you to know before we listen to Barrister Ghana Valentine. We would like to think that the UN General Assembly Resolution 1608-XV granted us independence within secure international boundaries and set October 1st as our Day of Independence. That decision remains immutable, and that's why we've reclaimed and restored our state and our government. The requirement to form a confederal segregative union with the already independent Republic of French Cameroon was simply an additional request after the fact. The fine print of the resolution talks about the government of the Southern Cameroons entering negotiations towards concluding a federal union treaty with the Republic of Cameroon by October 1st. It was not a prerequisite for the lifting of the Union Jack on October 1st, since we already had a government and a functional state. In fact, the restoration of our state on October 1st, 2017, and the long-standing observation of our Independence Day on October 1st assumes that we are an independent state and were only occupied and annexed through the guise of a federal union in 1972. The Southern Cameroons was unique in this aspect, for UN Trust territories like British Togoland in a similar situation were simply absorbed into the Gold Coast in a plebiscite vote in 1957 to form modern-day Ghana. As far as we of Undaunted are concerned, we believe that once Ambazonia drives or negotiates the occupiers out of Ambazonia, we would have simply arrogated our sovereign independence. since the UN Decolonization Committee on the Southern Cameroons had been disbanded long ago. We think our stronger argument is that we were duly granted independence as per UN General Assembly Resolution 1608-XV within secure international boundaries and later occupied and annexed by a belligerent neighbor. 20th May marked the actual date that the fake referendum was conducted to formally annex the state of the Southern Cameroons or the Federated State of West Cameroon. Since Resolution 1608-XB itself was nuanced, we should interpret it that our best favor, we therefore posit that we were granted independence in 1961 and simply overran, occupied and later informally annexed by an expansionist neighbor on May 20, 1972. I believe at this point we have set the stage for the next speaker.
We have Barrister Valentine Ghana here. He is to talk on, he's continuing the talk on the force of UN resolutions and non-negotiable sovereignty of Ambazonia. All right, Barrister Ghana, the mic is all yours right about now.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all, and good evening to those who are joining from the home front. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, very good. Also, kudos to all the speakers who have been with us from the beginning of this week to articulate, manifest, and demonstrate in every possible way the chains that we are bounded by, the chains that were fastened on us at the eve of the granting of our independence. And we continue with that journey to inform our people, to uplift our spirits, and to demonstrate unequivocally that we are an independent people, as Pa Augustine Dangam stated. He was intellectually, factually, and historically very correct in that we were granted independence by the United Nations. The process of decolonizing us wasn't completed, and so our sovereignty was stolen at that very moment of our independence becoming full fruition. Because if you look at all the UN resolutions, if you look at UN resolution 1541, 1514, 1608, 1352. If you look at all the examples of states who were in our similar position, you realize that the thievery of our independence, sooner than later, is going to come to an end. And when you see our valiant heroes, our restoration forces, fighting heroically, if you see our people rising up, both on the home front and in the diaspora, to erase this thievery, to defend our independence, and to restore our sovereignty. And if you look in the force of law, you realize that French Cameroon, or La République du Cameroun, and France have no other choice but to pack and leave Ambazonia. Either through the force of military action or through a possible referendum for us to reaffirm our independence and exit from that unholy union. Now, if you look at all of those resolutions which we talk about, 1514, 1608, and if you key on a statement which one of the speakers or the commentators did make, where she said that if you read the transcripts of the Fourth Committee of Decolonization, dovetailing into UN Resolution 1608, you would realize that a precondition for the union with French Cameroon, a precondition was a Treaty of Union, because the two territories prior to independence of both of them were two Class B trust territories of equal status, emanating or coming from the Treaty of Versailles, confirmed by the League of Nations, confirmed by various treaties after that, and confirmed by the United Nations, the successor to the League of Nations, and coming down to 1953, where we exited from the Eastern House of Assembly in Nigeria and set up our own independent government in Boye, demonstrating in every facet, in every imaginable way, that we were already an autonomous state, a self-governing state with a plural democratic system. And if you look at the force of law of our independence, and you try to reason out why La République is running from coming to the negotiation table, there are two examples that will highlight that reason why both France and La République are running away from the negotiation table. We'll look at one example to the north of Cameroon and another example further south. Now, if you look at the example, I think a lot of people who are versed with current or contemporary African history and paid attention in the 80s will remember that there was a brutal war that was fought in Chad, with Libya aiding some sides in that conflict, and Libya within that conflict also claiming its right to the Azu Strip. The Azu Strip is a parcel of land that lies between Chad and Libya. And Libya staked claims to the Azu Strip with
certain rationalizations that are similar to the rationalizations that have been made by La République du Cameroon. And when you look at the force of international law, the force of UN resolutions, and the force of international treaties, you realize that case, the case of Libya against Chad, pertaining to the Azov Strip, was eventually settled in the international courts under the ICJ. And it came down to what they call the Treaty of Friendship and Good Neighborliness that was made between France and Libya in 1955. So treaties have a force in law, and treaties made between two nations or made in a conference from an agglomeration of nations have force in law. And Libya could not escape from this treaty. Thus, the International Court of Justice ruled in favor of Chad, that Chad was the rightful owner of the Azov Strip. Now, Libya tried to argue that following the Senussi order, or going back to the Ottoman Empire, the Azov Strip had been part of Libya. Just like La République makes that argument that going back to German Cameroon, it had some nebulous right to the southern Cameroons. But then that treaty between France and Libya took priority in law. And one other thing we need to remember is that the force of treaties in law is even higher than the force of national constitutions. So if a nation makes a treaty with another nation or sits to a treaty made during a conference, it cannot subsequently come argue against that treaty. Now, if we look to another example further south, and again, before I go to that example further south, I have to reiterate the point that that claim by Libya, which started in the 60s onto the 70s, leading to a civil war and an intervention by Libya in Chad in the 80s, that conflict was eventually resolved in that ICJ case in 1994. So you have to ask yourself, why is France and La République running away from the negotiation table if they have any inkling of a right over the southern Cameroons? Now we move further south and look at the case of Namibia, which was annexed by South Africa when the Boer regime in South Africa ejected the Germans out of Southwest Africa during the First World War. South Africa, following that annexation, argued over and over in so many disjointed ways that Southwest Africa, which is currently Namibia, was part of its territory. That argument did not hold the force of law. And in 1966, the United Nations General Assembly voted to revoke that annexation of Southwest Africa by the apartheid regime in South Africa. And so a guerrilla war now erupted to eject South Africa out of Namibia. And Sam Nujoma, leading an organization we came to understand as SWAPO, and SWAPO standing for Southwest Africa People's Organization, fought valiantly. And when the Angolan conflict was being settled, given that the apartheid regime itself was sunsetting in 1988, the settlement followed the UN resolution and the force of international law of treaties that finally ejected South Africa out of Southwest Africa. Again, Southwest Africa, called Namibia, regained its independence, and Sam Nujoma, under the platform of SWAPO, won the first multi-party elections in Namibia. Now, if you look at that case again of Namibia or Southwest Africa, those were settlements that came out of the Treaty of Versailles. Remember, Germany had 4 colonies in Africa: Togo, German Cameroon, Tanganyika, which is present-day Tanzania, and Southwest Africa. And so, the same force of law that allowed South Africa to annex Namibia, but under international law, later rejected